New week, and it's great to be back from the debate. And we begin tonight with that growing coronavirus emergency, the deadliest 24 hours so far. In fact, 97 new deaths reported in just one day. Troubling new images tonight from Chinese social media showing a couple being dragged away, reportedly for refusing to self-quarantine. And the number of sick on board that cruise ship off the coast of Japan doubling to 135, including 23 Americans. Thousands of passengers trapped on the ship fearing they'll be infected next. And tonight, the World Health Organization saying they fear the more than 40,000 reported cases may just be the tip of the iceberg. ABC's Maggie Rulli leads us off from Japan tonight.
God.
These chilling new images now emerging on Chinese social media showing the drastic steps taken to try to stop the spread of that virus. Quarantine teams seen dragging a couple from their apartment after they reportedly refused to self-quarantine. And tonight, this self-described citizen journalist who has defied the Chinese government to report on shortages of masks and protective clothing hasn't been heard from in days. The virus has now sickened over 40,000 and killed 910 people, including the first American, a 60-year-old in Wuhan. Over the weekend, in just 24 hours, nearly 100 people died, the deadliest day yet. Overnight, the cases aboard that quarantine cruise ship off Japan doubling to 135. At least 23 of those infected are Americans, including Rebecca Frazier from Oregon, who is still hospitalized.
It doesn't even feel like a cold, to be perfectly honest. I wouldn't have known that there was anything wrong with me if they hadn't tested me.
Her husband tested negative, but is stuck on the ship for 8 more days, along with 3,700 others, as more passengers get sick.
It's just scary hearing the numbers increase.
Newlyweds Milena Basso and her husband Gaetano Cerullo fear they could be next.
It's just slowly creeping up, so it's making us think us being on here, are we just prone to this scenario to happen?
Despite the worries on board, the CDC says there's no evidence the virus can spread through the ship's ventilation system. Back in China today, President Xi Jinping making a rare visit to a health center in Beijing, wearing a mask, even getting his temperature taken. President Trump saying just 2 nights ago he had a long talk with the Chinese president.
I had a long talk with President Xi, for the people in this room, 2 nights ago, and he feels very confident. During the month of April, the heat, generally speaking, kills this kind of virus, so that would be a good thing. But we're in great shape in our country.
All right, Maggie Rulli joins us from Japan tonight. And Maggie, we just heard President Trump there today saying we can expect to see the virus at least start to go away come the spring and the warmer temperatures. What are health authorities saying about that tonight?
Well, that's the hope, David. And health experts do say that respiratory illnesses, we often see them start to go away in the warmer weather. But David, this is a new virus, and experts caution we still don't know how it spreads or if warmer weather will actually
Don't know the characteristics behind it.
not spread down.
Is now facing several charges, including attempted murder.
He was depressed at times because his son got shot.
2 senior law enforcement officials tell NBC News Williams made a rambling statement about the shootings, voicing his anger over a 2018 arrest for driving while intoxicated. In a tweet, President Trump blamed the New York attacks in part on weak leadership, declaring our wonderful NYC police are under assault. The Police Sergeants Union went further, saying the NYPD was declaring war on Mayor Bill de Blasio.
Isn't that a little strong? No, it's factual. The cops in this city do not respect the mayor.
The mayor responded, "Our city is hurting right now. This is no time for division." Researchers have found that while being a cop is dangerous, it's safer now than it was 50 years ago. Since 1970, there's been a 75% drop in police officer line-of-duty deaths.
Here in the Bronx, the alleged gunman's attorney will only say that there's a lot we still don't know about what led up to these shootings. Tonight, his client is being held without bail, Lester.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez, thank you. New developments this evening in the coronavirus crisis. China experiencing the deadliest day of the outbreak yet. Nearly 100 dead in 24 hours as the number of cases soars over 40,000. NBC's Janice Mackey-Frayer is in Beijing.
Tonight, extreme measures to contain the virus. In Wuhan, spraying disinfectant on buildings and cars. And videos on social media showing quarantine squads looking for
officer. Here's ABC's Gio Benitez tonight.
police precinct on Sunday morning. Moments later, drawing his gun. An officer ducks for cover as gunfire rings out. The suspect runs into another room, emptying his entire clip, striking a lieutenant in the arm, then dropping to the ground, his gun flying across the floor. More than a dozen officers swarmed the suspect, one punching him repeatedly.
I will point out that this coward immediately laid down, but only after he ran out of bullets.
Saturday night, police say this surveillance video shows the same gunman approaching a police van, shooting one officer in the neck.
This was an attempt to assassinate police officers. We need to use that word.
Tonight, Robert Williams standing before a judge, his face beaten. Prosecutors say he confessed to both crimes and even threatened to do it again. Both officers are now out of the hospital. One of them, Jose Gautreaux, was applauded as he stood up from his wheelchair. And David, Robert Williams was convicted of attempted murder in 2002, paroled in 2017. Now he faces 12 more counts of attempted murder. He's pleaded not guilty. David?
Gio Benitez in New York. Gio, thank you. Now to the race for 2020 tonight and a new national poll.
Picking up their attacks on one another. Kristen Welker is there for us tonight.
Tonight, it's the fun.
In the moment and have fun tonight.
Hack into one of the country's leading credit agencies. Here's Jeff Pegues.
Investigators say Chinese military hackers had access to Equifax computer systems for months, stealing the personal information of about half the U.S. population.
This was one of the largest data breaches in history.
Attorney General William Barr.
The hackers obtained the names, birth dates, and social security numbers of nearly 150 million Americans.
According to the indictment, the hackers also stole the driver's license numbers of at least 10 million Americans and credit card numbers and other personally identifiable information belonging to 200,000 Americans. Is there evidence that this stolen information is already being used?
There is not. At this time.
But the FBI is worried the data the hackers swept up might later be used to target American intelligence officers or other individuals China sees as adversaries. The hack, which began 3 years ago, rocked Equifax, leading to a congressional probe, the resignation of its CEO, Richard Smith, and a settlement of up to $700 million to compensate victims of the attack. And so Equifax joins a growing list of companies the Chinese have targeted. And today, the Attorney General said that 80% of economic espionage prosecutions implicate the Chinese government.
That's a stunning number.
It is.
Thank you, Jeff. Tonight, 2 police officers in Arkansas are recovering from gunshot wounds after a shootout at a Walmart. The officers confronted a man who was making threats at the store, and he opened fire. Well, they fired back and killed the suspect. One of the officers needed surgery, but both are expected to be okay. Tonight, for the 4th time, the Pentagon is reporting a big jump in the number of American troops diagnosed with traumatic brain injuries following that Iranian missile attack last month. It's now more than 121 have been sent back to the U.S. for treatment. David Martin on what the troops experienced.
The blast was so big, it was unlike anything I've ever heard or seen or felt.
Speaking to Holly Williams just days after the attack, Sergeant First Class Dane Casager's first-hand description helps explain why the number of soldiers suffering concussion-like symptoms continues to climb. Casager was in the back of a truck operating a drone.
The truck I was in actually lifted up on 2 wheels and then came back down.
One of these trucks?
Yes.
President Trump said the symptoms of what is officially called mild traumatic brain injury were not serious.
I heard that they had headaches and a couple of other things, but I would say, and I can report, it is not very serious.
But this is how it felt when it happened.
The shock wave, like moving through your body after you hear it, and then it's just a sinking feeling of like your existence is coming to an end.
Of the 109 identified with concussion symptoms, 76 have been returned to duty. David Martin, CBS News, The Pentagon.
TV star Lori Loughlin and her husband allegedly paid $500,000 to get their daughter into a prestigious school. And according to prosecutors, that's not all. Here's Carter Evans with the new details.
For actress Lori Loughlin and her husband Massimo Giannulli, the evidence is mounting. New documents from prosecutors show for the first time the lengths the couple allegedly went to get their daughter into USC. This phony resume is heavily redacted, but the graduation data...
That is so sick.
Kitchen, figuring out what...
Both Kobe and Gigi are gone, praying for all of the victims.
John and Carrie Altabelli leave behind a 29-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter. Tens of thousands of dollars have been raised on their behalf. Lester, it's been 2 weeks since that helicopter crash, and many here are still grieving.
Yeah, that loss felt so deeply. All right, thank you, Miguel. We'll be right back in 60 seconds with the new evidence in the case against Lori Loughlin, what it could mean for her future, and why prosecutors are reviewing who killed Malcolm X decades later.
Next tonight, 4 members of China's military indicted in the massive hacking of the credit reporting agency Equifax that exposed 145 million Americans' private information. The Justice Department claiming they were part of a special military unit involved in a deliberate and sweeping intrusion into the private data of Americans. Here's our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, tonight.
Tonight, U.S. law enforcement, for the first time, accusing the Chinese military of being behind perhaps the biggest hack of Americans ever. The FBI claiming today that these 4 members of China's People's Liberation Army were responsible for the 2017 breach of Equifax, one of the nation's biggest credit reporting agencies.
The scale of the theft was staggering.
The theft included the names, dates of birth, and social security numbers of nearly half the U.S. population. Also stolen the driver's license numbers of at least 10 million Americans. The Attorney General saying the hack imposed substantial costs and burdens to the victims.
They had to take measures to protect themselves from identity theft.
And beyond the massive privacy breach, authorities say the computer hack is part of the broader plan by China to commit economic espionage.
All right, so let's get to Pierre Thomas. He's live in Washington tonight. And Pierre, Attorney General Barr making another headline today saying that he will accept information about Ukraine from President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, which could include information on Joe Biden and his son, Hunter.
That's right, David. Barr and his department says that they will take a look at any allegations from Giuliani, but he warned that, quote, you can't take anything coming from the Ukraine at face value, suggesting that such information should be viewed with skepticism. David?
Pierre Thomas with us live tonight. Pierre, thank you. We're going to turn now to the massive storm system stretching from Texas all the way up into the Northeast. Dangerous winds and heavy rains tonight. A treacherous drive in Pickens, Mississippi, blinding rain. That's Interstate 55, that rain there. And a real concern of flash flooding right into the evening. Let's get right to Chief Meteorologist Ginger Zee. She's tracking it all for us again tonight. Hey, Ginger.
David, Jackson, Mississippi has had more than 15 inches of rain since the beginning of the year. That is 245% their normal. It's raining all the way up into the Northeast along that stationary front, and we have super saturation coming at us this week. So let's talk about the flash flood potential and the timing. We take it from tonight with that risk of severe storms yet tonight into tomorrow, where that storm really starts to develop there from Texas. You see the snowy end of it in New Mexico. 2 to 4 inches that could take down trees when they're saturated, and then the wind comes with it. Damaging wind, tornado threat all on Wednesday in the area highlighted here: Nashville, Birmingham, Biloxi, and Mobile, all included, David.
All right, Ginger, thanks. Welcome back from the Oscars. There is still much more ahead on World News Tonight this Monday. The new and emotional message tonight from Kobe Bryant's wife. Also ahead, the confrontation in a high school parking lot. A mother says her son was trying to get to an orthodontist's appointment. So why did the school officer threaten to shoot him? Look at this tonight, the jailhouse riot. Inmates refusing to return to their cells, and the moment a tactical unit deploys their weaponry and then moves in. And a frightening moment for passengers. The dangerous winds from a major winter storm, wind gusts reaching nearly 100 miles per hour. You could see it. The plane's trying to take off. A lot more news ahead. Stay tuned.
If you have postmenopausal osteoporosis and a high
returning to normal. But now, the former USC student is staring at a new layer of a deepening scandal. Prosecutors releasing this college resume in a court filing that appears to be Olivia Jade's, though the name is redacted. The bullet points apparently portraying a litany of lies for a student authorities say never participated in crew. 2 gold medals at the San Diego Crew Classic, a 4th place finish at the head of the Lagoon Foster City, and other competitions dating back to 2017. Last month, Lachlan and her husband, fashion designer Massimo Giannulli, argued payments to get their daughter into USC were legitimate donations, not bribes. The two technically face dozens of years behind bars for federal bribery and conspiracy to commit money laundering, mail, and wire fraud. Though experts say they will likely receive less. The big question now, will Olivia Jade, who has not been charged, be dragged into the case?
Federal prosecutors may use her to pressure these defendants into pleading guilty rather than have their daughter testify against them.
The latest chapter in an ongoing saga. Sam Brock, NBC News.
Tonight, the district attorney here in New York is reviewing the case of those convicted of killing Malcolm X after a documentary raised new questions about who assassinated him. Here's Rahima Ellis.
The official count of who killed Malcolm X, it's not true.
An explosive new Netflix documentary casts doubt on the assassination of Malcolm X 55 years ago this month. Now, the Manhattan DA's office says it will begin a preliminary review of the matter, something that will determine what further investigative steps may be undertaken. Malcolm's family has always wanted to know more.
It's important to get answers about who gunned down my father.
In a brazen attack, Malcolm X was gunned down in front of his wife and children while giving a speech in Harlem.
We're brutalized because we are black people in America.
Malcolm became an even more controversial figure after his public falling out with the Nation of Islam.
I do believe there'll be attempts on my life.
3 members of the Nation of Islam were arrested and convicted of Malcolm's assassination in a case that raised questions from the start. One confessed and maintained the other 2 were innocent. Historian Abdur Rahman Muhammad says the alibis of 2 of those convicted were ignored.
And the thing is, 2 of them weren't even in the Autobahn bubble that day.
One of them died in 2009, maintaining his innocence. Another, Muhammad Aziz, released after 20 years, is now 81 years old. His lawyer and the Innocence Project say they're grateful the DA is taking another look at one of the most high-profile murders in U.S. history. Rahima Ellis, NBC News, New York.
We'll take a short break, and then up next, a major outpouring of pride today after a history-making win.
And a public memorial service is planned for Kobe and Gianna right here at the Staples Center on the 24th. David?
All right, Kina, thank you. When we come back, the frightening moments for passengers, planes flying in a storm, wind gusts reaching nearly 100 miles per hour, and you'll see it next.
And to secure your phone.
Depression and suicidal thoughts in girls. In one study, girls reported feeling negative after 10 minutes of browsing Facebook. 17-year-old Maya Bell has seen it firsthand.
I become more isolated when I'm on social media, even though it's supposed to be like a connector. It's honestly very isolating.
According to the article, kids who spend less time socializing in person are more vulnerable. And easy access online to information about how to commit suicide increases risk too. Something Carol Deely knows too well. Her 12-year-old son Gabriel took his life just over a year ago.
Kids can't get away from all this peer pressure. And I think it's just terrible. I would not want to be a child right now.
Carol started an organization called Gabriel's Light to promote the safe use of technology. Now, researchers say parents should talk to their kids about the risks of social media, but instead of banning it, they should limit screen time, both for their kids and themselves, to set a good example. Nora?
We all need help with that. Hey, Jonna, thank you. The night after it made history at the Oscars, Parasite: Invasion is Coming. The first Korean film and first non-English film ever to win Best Picture is doubling its reach this weekend and will be shown on about 2,000 theaters here in the U.S. And there are reports tonight that writer and director Bong Joon-ho is in talks with HBO to turn Parasite into a limited series. Up next, a unique path on the road to recovery with no strings attached.
If you can't watch the CBS Evening News, you can listen. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Sponsored by Freshpet.
With the Simply Safe Smart Lock.
The successor. This was back in December 2018 when AKK, as everyone calls her, won the leadership vote. Since then, she's become known as Mini Merkel. Well, here's the reaction of Chancellor Merkel today.
I regard her decision with the utmost respect, but I have to say that I regret it. I can imagine it wasn't easy for her to do this, and I thank her for being prepared to stay on to steer the process of choosing a successor.
Well, Jeff Rathkes from the American Institute for Contemporary German Studies. He says, huge news in Germany. AKK announces she'll hand over the chairmanship by the summer. He says the debacle last week in Thuringen was just a tremor. Now comes the big aftershocks. Now, he's talking about Thuringia, which is a state right in the centre of Germany, and this is the debacle which he was talking about. On Wednesday, this man, Thomas Kemmerich, from the Liberal FDP party, became state prime minister, but he only managed to do so with the votes from the far-right AFD party, because if you look at last year's state election results, here's the FDP in yellow. They only got 5% in the election, so he decided to work with the far right, and that broke a long-standing taboo in German politics, the ramifications.
Parasite, which became the first foreign language film to win the Oscar for Best Picture. Our Kathy Park has more.
Parasite. A stunning win. Followed by disbelief.
I'm speechless.
A South Korean film with its own Hollywood ending, especially for director Bong Joon-ho.
Thank you. Great honor.
As the lights dimmed, signaling the end of the show, A-listers in the front row insisting the cast and crew get their moment.
Hi, everybody.
The dark thriller illustrates a deep divide between the rich and poor in South Korea.
Why is this such a big moment for Koreans?
It has been a ceiling-shattering moment for the history of Korean cinema as well as the U.S. Entertainment industry.
The celebration stretched to South Korea, on TV, and at an official meeting with President Moon, sharing the news. A New York City restaurant also recreated japaguri, a dish you might remember seeing in the film, now advertised as the best food in a feature film.
Whether you're rich or poor, everybody loves this instant noodle.
Parasite's success particularly meaningful, and an award show often criticized for its lack of diversity.
I feel like a very opportune moment in history is happening right now.
An international film soaring beyond its 1-inch subtitles and drawing universal applause. Kathy Park, NBC News.
And up next, we'll go inside the competition for Best in Show.
Bring people together to seek pragmatic solutions.
I'm Mike Bloomberg, and I approve this message.
With Advil Liquid Gels, you have fast-acting power over pain.
That was being generated, that's symptomatic of the volume of rain that came down. It's also worth noting there were problems elsewhere. Western Australia is dealing with the aftermath of tropical cyclone Damien, which made landfall at the weekend, as you can see. And if you want a sense of just how much it rained in Sydney over the last few days, well, this is how much it rains on average in February. This is how much it rained over 4 days. We have an update from the Regional Fire Service saying it is the most positive news we've had in some time. The reason
That's unusual. I've lost my connection. Well, that'll do. Good luck to all of us. It's went from one extreme to another towards being hot and dry and having all the fires to the point now they're having major flooding over in that same area. I thought I was going to pop back on, but we're having bad weather here and it's possibly messing with my satellite trajectory in regards towards me receiving my message proper. I'm pretty sure that's what's going on this particular channel. All right, thanks again. Good luck to all of us. And once more, shalom. See you. Bye. That's the news for tonight.